So without getting lost in the exact numbers, what is clear is that there is a very clear segmentation that's happened in the market, and whether you're a content provider, whether you're an e-commerce player, whether you're a player in the devices market, you need to take care of the various segments that have clearly emerged. They're growing at different rates, and clearly the 3G smartphone growth is the fastest amongst all these segments, but clearly that a segmented approach is required. We know that each month 8 to 10 million Indians connect on the internet for the first time, mostly on mobile. This country now sells around 8 million smartphone users every month. A large percentage of those users are indeed repeat buyers of a smartphone, but equally a large percentage, or I would say 30 to 40% of that, are first-time users of a smartphone. The smartphone users who are repeat buyers obviously don't throw away their phones. Some of them keep them in their drawers as a standby phone, but many of them actually take that phone and hand it down or sell it to a second-hand dealer and so on. But clearly, there are 8 to 10 million internet users coming in, and largely on mobile. Yeah, and we know about this. There are under-penetrated categories, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. I think what's interesting is that many of us who've been around in this industry in some form or the other, I've been around for the last 9 to 10 years, when you talk about something and you say, it's going to happen, and you, for the next 2-3 years, you start saying, well, it's not happening. But this is all about the theory of tipping point. And I think 2014 was clearly a tipping point as far as the smartphone base is concerned. I think we reached 150 million people having a smartphone, and suddenly the whole ecosystem took notice. 5% of e-commerce sales as early as Jan 2014 used to come from the mobile space. Maybe it's give or take 1 or 2%. Today, 65% of their business, and I'm sure some speaker would have spoken about it, came in. And it came in because there was just a rapid, and this is the virtuous cycle we're on. Because it's an app-led industry, more people realize that smartphone is not just a fashion statement or not just a cool messaging device, it's also a utility device. So more people start buying it. As people start buying it, new services start mushrooming. And anybody who says that he can foresee what will happen next is probably, well, there'll be lots of things that will happen next. But one thing is clear, that will happen on mobile first. And that's got to do with the fact that it has exploded. Yeah, we know for a fact that the smartphone, we are 2 to 3 years behind China as far as this tipping point and the S-curve is concerned. But clearly this S-curve, we are now at the start of the S-curve, and it'll be a matter of a couple of years when we'll reach 500 million at least of smartphone installed base. Yeah. And of course, there's a massive wave of conversion of feature phones to smartphones. And it's happened thanks to some really good devices, including some of our devices, but also from a lot of competitors. I think this is an interesting point, and this is about, you can never measure India by averages because of the huge, if you might say, height of the pyramid or whatever you might say. India, you can never measure through any averages. 70% of the industry smartphone unit sales comes from 3 metros and 8 telecom circles. When I started marketing way back in the 90s, early 90s, we used to call them media dark states, right? There used to be media dark states where we couldn't penetrate through television. There are still some states that are way behind as far as mobile internet penetration is concerned, and therefore internet penetration is concerned. And therefore, if you mark the geographies, it's very clear that there is still a long way to go, and therefore a huge opportunity in many ways. There are over 1,000 towns which sell some amount of smartphones. I think what is important is the footprint. The 3 top metros contribute to 20% of the sales. The next 10 cities, 18%. Next 20 cities, 12%. And next 40 cities, 10%. Now that's 60% coming from only 85 cities, which total together to around 180 million population. Now, you can look at it one way or the other. You can say, oh, wow, only 60%. But reality is that there's a huge part of the country where smartphone penetration still not happened. And I say this to all of us as a collective group, and I was as an example, working rural UP outside Raebareli, and it was a pleasure to see that smartphones has reached the smallest town. But yes, it doesn't have the depth that we're looking for. So what I will talk about in the next few slides is to say, how do we take it to those parts of the country where we haven't yet penetrated with smartphones. And let me tell you, many of the cities and the towns and villages that I went to actually had 3G coverage. So I give credit to the operator, and I was part of that ecosystem as well, that there was 3G coverage in those cities, but we didn't have enough smartphone sales. And therefore, obviously there is a trigger missing where the consumer is not wanting to purchase a smartphone, and we'll talk about what those could be. One thing is clear, I just put these figures up just to give us a confidence that we know why smartphone has become the primary device to lead mobile internet, and that's got to do with the fact that a consumer has to spend $7,000 to $9,000 in the whole system cost, if I might call it, the cost of connectivity and the cost of the handset to be connected to the internet if he uses a mobile device. And of course, if he uses the traditional desktop, laptop, etc., the cost is significantly higher. So no rocket science, but good to kind of reconfirm that this 7,000 to 9,000 figure will just get, I hope, lesser and lesser. And if the country GDP grows, then in affordability terms, it will of course become within reach of a much larger audience. The other thing that is happening is a lot of people look at ASPs and say, you know what, ASPs are not falling on smartphones fast enough. They might not be falling fast enough, but the reality is that consumers are getting a lot better features at lower and lower prices. And as an example, this is the price of a 5-inch 3G offering in the market. It's down from 15,000 to 5,000. And we know that a screen size is an important feature. It might not be as disruptive, but yes, it is a very important feature for adoption, and especially adoption on 3G. Yeah. The reason I put up this slide is also to say that increasingly the line between phablets and tablets and phones is going to become more and more blurred. But one thing is sure, that consumers will get more and more value at a lower and lower cost. Now, I do want to emphasize that please do not expect that one day we'll have a $50 smartphone which will do everything. Reality is, when we do offer cheaper smartphones, we actually still realize that our fastest selling and the highest volume getter still tends to be a phone which is around $100. Yeah? So our highest selling volume driver in smartphones is a 6,000 rupee device. Not, even though we have smartphones which are as cheap as 3,000. And that's because consumers do want a basic minimum consumer experience for them to adopt a smartphone. Yeah? I talked about this. I think we're clear that this revolution will affect many industries. There'll probably be a very few industries will not touch, and there'll be obviously new opportunities that this industry will throw up. It could be travel, health, and clearly the roadmap is not clear for either of them. But what is very clear is that this will disrupt any industry where aggregation is required, where remote access can be a big driver, where location context can be a big driver, and so on and so forth.